Sick of getting blisters? Stop slipping and just be comfortable with Pure Grip Socks Pro. Great fit, great comfort, lots of grip, and an even better price. Available now at puregripsocks.com.
Believe it or not, it's been almost a year since Adidas launched X Speedportal, and while there have been some bumps in the road along the way, I think most people would agree with me in saying that their top-end variants, particularly the more popular 0.1 variation, wasn't their best effort. With that said, inside this box I have its replacement, and I am so happy to report that despite what appears to be very subtle changes, the changes they have made makes for a dramatically improved product. Ladies and gentlemen, say hello to the brand new Adidas X CrazyFast.1, the direct replacement for the Speedportal 0.1 that shares the exact same sole plate and stud pattern tooling, but reworks the upper entirely, now featuring their Aeropacity Speed Skin upper with aero cage reinforcement, basically a more raw synthetic material that's semi-translucent versus the textile-based synthetic found on the previous model. Think of it almost as a middle ground between the X Ghosted and the X Speedflow, which is not a bad combination, all for the retail price of $260, which unfortunately is up $10 from the previous generation. And I know what you're thinking, these borderline look like a new graphics package for the outgoing Speedportal, but trust me when I say, and it's very rare that I get to say this, everything that they've changed about the upper of this football boot is for the better of the final product. This is legitimately an improvement in every single way, and I want to talk about why that is as we break down all the details of the new CrazyFast.1, including how they fit and feel on feet. So if you're interested in learning more, please stick around, and if you are interested in a pair for yourself, you can pick them up below their normal retail price by way of exclusive SR4U coupon codes by checking out the first link down below. And as always, if you enjoy these brutally honest reviews, don't forget to drop a like on the video and make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you haven't already so you don't miss out on my reviews of all the latest football boots of 2023. So starting with the upper, it's the single biggest change coming from the Speedportal 0.1 that this football boot replaces, where I think the major disappointment of both Speedportal 0.1 and Speedportal Plus was despite the very sock-like look that that upper had with its textile/knit base, the end result was an upper that was just overly stiff and rigid and ultimately just didn't feel all that comfortable, along with a base shape that I think was just a little bit off. Where this time around, they've tweaked the synthetic, now being called Aeropacity Speed Skin with an aero cage reinforcement, where you can see internally there is a textile-based support cage in lime green, and it's still technically a textile-based synthetic. If you look very closely, the texturing on the surface of the upper is that super thin grid pattern textile base. However, this time around, the upper is significantly thinner and trends towards being more of a plasticky type of synthetic with far superior pliability than that of the Speedportal, where, like I said in the intro of the video, it kind of combines elements of past Adidas X models, where you get that raw, thin synthetic feel of the upper of the X Ghosted with more of the pliability from the Adidas X Speedflow. Not a bad combination if you ask me. From a touch perspective, they're as thin as you can possibly get, and I realize that the X CrazyFast Plus is being touted as the thinnest and lightest version of the boot, and while it certainly is lighter than the CrazyFast.1, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the video, from a thickness standpoint, it might not be technically as thin, but the difference is literally fractions of a millimeter that quite honestly you can't feel. If you want that raw barefoot feel on the ball, like you're not wearing any shoes whatsoever, that's exactly what you're going to get from this basically translucent upper material. The surface texture is kept to a minimal. They've gotten rid of all of the little kind of raised texturing that the Speedportal had that ultimately did nothing, and for the most part, you have more of a slick finish to the upper, not a ton of additional grip, but it's really the pliability of this upper that I think makes the world of difference in terms of the playing experience of the CrazyFast.1 compared to any top-end variation of Speedportal, where those boots just felt awkwardly stiff and uncomfortable even after break-in. This does have some stiffness out of the box, but the pliability in general, the way that it's able to move and bend with your foot, is just so much more natural. It doesn't feel like your foot is fighting to fit inside of the football boot, which is more or less the experience that I had as well as many others had with the Speedportal. I think they nailed the shape in terms of modifying the overall volume. It seems to sit a little bit lower through the toe box and forefoot area, and in general just wraps a little bit more closely to the foot. The one thing that I will say is over the first 10 minutes of wear, there's a little bit of folding in the material right here that kind of pushes into your foot, but as you get some heat into the upper just from wearing the boots, it does get even more pliable, and in general, that sensation just went away and I had no issues with discomfort whatsoever. And in terms of responsiveness, definitely to get this pliability, there's a little bit less structure to this upper than what we had on the Speedportal, but I don't think that the boots feel any less responsive because of it. This wraps your foot really, really nicely, and in general, they feel like super thin speed boots that have that second skin sensation, which ultimately is what I think most people are looking for when buying a pair of football boots in this category. Unlike the CrazyFast Plus that has the more traditional U-throat construction and standalone tongue, the CrazyFast.1 does maintain the one-piece upper construction that has kind of become a normal thing within the football boot industry, and certainly what we've seen over the last several years for the Adidas X series, in that this central portion of the upper is elasticated prime knit with a really cool pattern that's kind of been embossed within the material itself. Ultimately, it does nothing, but it does look quite cool. However, they've made this material significantly more stretchy than it was on Speedportal 0.1, making putting these boots on and taking them off significantly easier than the previous model, which I really, really appreciate. The laces still pretty much run down the middle. Personally, I wish they ran a little bit deeper, but in general, with the laces tied tight, the boots wrap your foot really nicely and in general feel nice and secure. At the rear, the boots maintain a low cut construction, and another complaint that I had with the previous generation X is that it just had an overly chunky heel, and this visually you can see right away definitely has less bulk to it, and the way that they've modified the padding on the inside, still having an above average amount of padding for a speed boot in general, but it feels so much better against your heel, so much more natural, and so much less clunky than the heel of the Speedportal. So again, I think that's a dramatic improvement over the previous generation. Then I'll give you guys a look at the insole, fully removable. It remains unchanged. It features this really soft kind of suede, almost microfiber type material on the surface, and then it's made from a single layer of this white foam, pretty much the standard Adidas Comfort insole that we've been getting for a very long time now. Moving to the base, you'll recognize the familiar speed frame sole plate and stud pattern from the Speedportal making its way onto the new CrazyFast, and you'll also notice that the carbon fiber plate or insert is not back. It's still made from plastic, where it would appear that the relationship or partnership between Carbitex and Adidas is done forever. I don't think that carbon plate is ever coming back, but luckily the plastic one that they're now calling an aero plate does pretty much feel and perform the exact same. It's also no different in terms of weight. However, I will say it's a bit of a bummer that despite no return of carbon fiber, which I think is typically viewed as a more expensive premium element, the price tag of this football boot has gone up $10 from the previous generation, where again, I understand the upper is all new, but if the sole plate tooling is exactly the same and one of the more expensive elements from the launch of the Speedportal has been taken away, I think it would have been nice for, at the very least, the price to have not gone up at all. Nonetheless, this sole plate still feels really good. If you want that responsive sensation through the forefoot, you're definitely getting it here. It's one of the more responsive sole plates on the market, and also just feels really lightweight and solid underfoot at the same time, which is kind of a hard combination of features to have. And as far as the stud pattern is concerned, you kind of get these bladed chevron studs, but they're definitely not as aggressive as what you're going to find from some of the other speed boot options out there. Nonetheless, still plenty of bite when pushing off, but a little bit more freedom to twist and pivot. If you've worn an Adidas football boot, or an X model for that matter, in the last several years, you kind of know what to expect. And in general, this performs to a standard that I think most people are going to be plenty happy with. When it comes to weight, given that the CrazyFast.1 uses the exact same sole plate tooling as the outgoing Speedportal 0.1, I don't think you can expect that much of a difference. But of course, using a scale both in the same size 9.5 US, we're going to find out exactly what that difference is, starting with the old Speedportal 0.1, 7.05 ounces, the equivalent of 200 grams exactly. change the scale back to ounces, and throw on the new CrazyFast.1, and you can see that they weigh in at 6.9 ounces, the equivalent of 195 grams. For those doing the math at home, that is a weight decrease of 5 grams in total, likely just due to the fact that the upper on the new CrazyFast is just that little bit thinner. But are you actually going to feel 5 grams less weight? Absolutely not. On feet, I think the CrazyFast.1 is a really solid take on a one-piece raw synthetic upper. Obviously, if you're a fan of leather boots that have that soft feel, these are definitely not going to be for you. They have that plasticky sensation like most thin synthetic football boots do. But in terms of giving you that nice balance of structure as well as pliability, you're definitely getting it here from this new Aeropacity Speedskin upper, as silly as that name might be. Also, the way that they've reshaped the upper compared to the Speedportals, and maybe that's not even necessarily the case. It could just be the added pliability to the upper. Regardless, when you tie the laces tight, it feels like it wraps your foot so much more closely. Of course, with any super thin synthetic, you're gonna get a little bit of ugly creasing and folding. That's the case with pretty much any thin synthetic, tight-fitting speed boot. It's pretty unavoidable, but in terms of overall comfort, it's a huge step up coming from either Speedportal Plus or Speedportal 0.1, not to mention the heel having significantly less bulk and in general just feeling so much more natural. This is a football boot with a minimal break-in time that really does give you that sensation of making contact with the ball without any interference whatsoever. As far as width is concerned, because of the more stretchy prime knit material across the top of the foot, they're so much easier to put on and just have more adjustability to them in general. So these are going to be suitable for a wide variety of foot types. I don't necessarily think that if you have extremely wide feet, these are going to be the best option, but I do think they will fit most people. And as far as sizing is concerned, I'm wearing these in my usual size 9.5 US, and the fit and the length is perfect. So if you are looking to get a pair for yourself, I would strongly recommend going true to size in order to achieve the best possible fit. So in conclusion, while I can't honestly say that I believe this is Adidas's best ever pair of speed boots, I can honestly say that I think the X CrazyFast.1 is a huge improvement over both top-end variations of the Speedportal that it replaces. The upper is thinner, more pliable, and doesn't sacrifice responsiveness compared to the outgoing Speedportal, but perhaps most importantly, and really my main gripe with that previous model, is I would put the Speedportal 0.1 on my feet, and while they fit okay and felt okay in a lot of ways, compared to their competition, they were just so far behind that it really made no sense for me to pick that boot over other options out there. In the case of the CrazyFast.1, the fit and comfort, perhaps most importantly, has been dramatically improved, and when I put these on my feet, I can honestly see myself picking these over other options that are out there for around the same price tag. Without question, it is a return to form for the Adidas X Speed series and legitimately a true competitor to the Nike Mercurial alternative. Whether you should buy these over the more expensive CrazyFast Plus, I guess that's down to personal preference, but I really do believe that for the extra $40 that the Plus model is going to run you, I actually think more people are going to prefer the fit and feel of the one-piece upper on the 0.1, just because it has that little bit more of a modern sensation that I think most people these days, especially if you've been wearing modern day speed boots, are used to.